Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Robert Schmidt, also known as Mr. IoT. I am Deloitte's Chief IoT Technologist with a deep passion for all things digital. This week on Coffee with Mr. IoT, Heather Rangel and I are talking with Mike Fallon from PTC. He's an expert on how to make new revenue with IoT. So we got to talk about money and IoT, a great topic. Mike, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming and joining us.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's good to be here.
We've had this interesting prep conversation, and you made this difference of value versus impact. And I got to say, I love that. What do you mean by that? You said you like impact more than value. Can you talk a little bit about what's the difference to you and talk about impact a little bit?
Sure. Essentially, you know, as I've come to the tech industry from the line of business and the customer side as opposed to the vendor side, and really, you know, managing a P&L, if you will. And value is a word that is, of course, often used in the tech industry. And I believe that impact is like one level down. So it's one thing to talk about value in terms of perhaps a broad perspective of what to achieve. But when I think of impact, it's more around what are the dollars? How do we define that in terms of financial impact to the business, whether it's through revenue, operational efficiencies, customer experience, and how that leads to new growth, things of that nature.
So when you think about making money in IoT, do you view this playing field as sort of a new frontier with the kind of wild, wild west mentality of designing business models? Or do you see this as a repackaging of business models you've been working with your whole life?
So great question. I see it really a combination of both. I see it really as enhancing and enabling what we've been used to and accustomed to, as well as creating definitely new business models, strictly because now that you have your product in the field and you have access to what's happening with it, you can monitor it, you can control it perhaps, you understand the usage. And so how you're able to monetize that or learn how to charge the customer in a new way that fits his business model, we're now capable of.
It's interesting to me, right? When I don't know, value, I always think of money. And when I think of impact, I think it's much more than money. It's sort of like, you know, I talk of human impact a lot. It fascinates me to think what human impact, for example, you know, we like to talk about self-driving cars in the context of, oh, isn't this cool? It changes lane on its own and all those kind of things. But really, when you look behind the scenes, I had this fascinating number, the National Highway Security, they have an abbreviation, I forgot. There's a national statistical group out there, and what they do is they measured accident rates before Tesla activated the autopilot and after, and actual accidents went down. So really, some of these technologies have impact on human lives. So let me take this and take it away from cars, and let me take it what you do with PTC and ThingWorks. What examples have you seen of impact that connecting things to the internet has made?
So I think that's a great context. And you know, the way we look at it, and we do talk to our customers about this, is really more of the human experience. And I think that kind of takes it beyond the dollars and cents, like you refer to, and really focuses on, you know, what is the impact, or what impact can you have on the user, whether it's the person driving the car or not driving the car, whether it's citizens in a smart city, whether it's the technician on the operating line, or whether it's the surgeon. And I think one of the things that I find, again, I come to the technology world from outside technology. And I think as things change, as they have been so quickly, one of the opportunities that we talk to our customers about is, who are you trying to impact, to use your context? And we actually use that as a cornerstone of how we change the conversation around how to create new revenue through IoT as well.
So what's the wildest conversation you've had in terms of ideas on how to make money in IoT?
So Many of the personas that we talk to and where we're helping customers are around, frankly, the CIO, VP of IT, engineering. PTC, as you may know, is really focused and has come from the world of helping customers create, manufacture, and service products. And so it's really from the industrial side. And, I think where we've been helping is more of how to think outside technology. I think a lot of people, and by the way, this is not certainly wild and broad like you're looking for. So unfortunately, and again, where we see the opportunity to help is focusing inside, how do I copy and paste the GE Aviation model around selling service as opposed to selling an asset? And that's not as simple as people think. And people are really on the front end of revenue versus operational value for money, for value.
So when you say it's not as simple as you think, what comes to mind? What are the hurdles people have? We often talk about think big, start small. What gets people to start small, and what hurdles are you seeing, and how do you help them?
Yeah. So the hurdles we see are when people want to talk about how to generate new revenue with IoT, they typically start with a lens of the product or the technology of how to connect. And so they look at it and say, we have a device, we can connect. Now, how do we charge the customer in new ways because we can connect? And as opposed to really, who cares? Why should the user pay for a new service? And so it's really shifting the conversation from connectivity, the technology stack and workflow to the user, going back to the human experience and the impact on the human side, and saying, why should that user pay for your service just because you can connect? Very common challenge that people kind of have a hard time on their own making that shift of mindset.
So let's continue with this, talking about humans. I'm intrigued always when fields are developing and like IoT is, and no one's really figured out what this thing is all going to look like and where the easiest paths to revenue will be. I'm fascinated with the role that women will play because this is sort of this great digital revolution that we're in. This is the first time that women have had a front seat at the table in the midst of a revolution. So if you think about women just in general, the research saying in general, on average, women having kind of a higher propensity to address empathy, to be empathetic, to manage social situations, and we apply that to understanding humans. What role do you see women playing in this field? What unique opportunities do women have that you're seeing in your daily work that could really help kind of change the game on women in tech?
So great question, and I'm glad that you framed it the way that you did. Again, on average, and considering, again, at the end of the day, between different, between women, between different cultures, on average, there's different thinking. I lived in Copenhagen and Scandinavia. People think differently there than they do in the US. Men and women, we think differently on average, without a doubt. And so I think the real opportunity for women to help kind of propel us to the next level is around that very point of the human element, the empathy, frankly, not to create any challenges with my male counterparts, thinking outside themselves, perhaps a little more naturally on average. And I really saw this first and foremost with a role I had in an innovation consultancy. And so we help companies design products and develop innovation through physical products. And the insight that we would get from a cross-functional team from female designers, okay, as opposed to just the male view, was extraordinary. And on more than every occasion, frankly, the impact on the customer and the insight that they draw, particularly as design researchers, is a real opportunity. And I think with technology moving so fast, changing so fast, and getting caught up a great deal for good reason around security, storage, and whatnot, that the way to kind of bring balance and equilibrium is with more support with women in the industry and bringing that human element to the conversation.
Heather, I gotta say, one of the things you bring to the table is always a new perspective and a new question I hadn't thought of. I never quite know if this is because it's Heather or because you're female, but it's a little bit of both. But in any case, Mike, tell me a story, like a real life story, and not using names. If you can, you could, but tell me a story of where you saw real value, real money, real impact created by one of your clients.
Okay, so maybe I'll tell that story around kind of compare and contrast a view of where monetization around the user impact first versus the device, really had I was able to change the game. Would that be okay in the context of what you're looking for?
Fantastic. I just want a real story, something like a real kind of like example. I love stories.
Yeah. So this is one that frankly is right in front of our eyes. And so, and one that I tell all the time, and it's very common. So if you take a look at what happens in people's homes around laundry, right? The experience of doing the laundry. And certainly I can say that men and women today, I know in my home anyway, we do laundry. And so if you take a look at the devices that are involved in laundry, frankly, perhaps on average, men would look at, how do I make my appliance more interesting to the laundry experience? And so I'm going to use that example of laundry a little bit generically, because this does happen to go along with other appliance type of situations we've been in. And so spend a lot of time trying to figure out, I can connect, where do I connect? How do I use that interface to the customer, and then create value? Frankly, vendor-defined value as opposed to user-defined value. And then in that process, and really not able to, I would say, drive impact and value for their customers. In the same vein, came along, you might be familiar with the dash button. Now, the dash button on itself maybe is interesting, but the story behind the dash button, and compare and contrast to how the device maker looked at the world versus, in this case, Amazon, looked at the world, was around more so of what is the user experience of the person doing laundry, and how do I make their life easier, as opposed to focused on the device. And so if you look at the simple story around the dash button, it's really convenience. So when you're doing laundry, who really wants to do that for a long time? You want to be onto something else. There's far more things that are important and more fun to do. And so that example of a story around user-focused, user-defined value, and allowing that person who's doing the laundry through IoT, through a dash button, to move on and do other things that they enjoy, not have to worry about, did I go up and pick up at the grocery store my Tide, is a great example of shifting the focus from the device to the user in more of a outside-in perspective.
Okay, so I'm a single mom with 2 teenagers. Both are athletes. I do a lot of laundry, man. I mean, it freaking dominates my life, I gotta tell you. But I will say that spending my little 5 minutes each day folding laundry, it's sort of like my little break from life, and it's almost like therapy. So I hope somebody thought through that. Pressing the button to get the detergent does help, but folding the laundry, there's something beautiful in that. And I could go on, but I won't, Robert, because I'm going to ask a question about people. I used to say, Robert's probably heard me say this many times, there is no IoT without the P. Like, none of the data around the Internet of Things matters if there aren't people at the end of it who care about it and need to use it. And so when you think about large digital collections of people, communities, I won't name any names, but various digital groups of connected people that are out there on platforms today, what role does connecting the Internet of Things to the Internet of People, what role does people play in finding the impact in all of this?
So again, not to bring it back to the same vantage point, but at the end of the day, you know, we look at things from, again, PTC is very much of a thing company, right? You know, at the end of the day, what really matters, even more than the data, because I think also people talk a lot about the data, it's all about the data. Well, it's really about the insights. And the insights is what connects, is what connects people and data. And data by itself, without the context of the insights of why it matters, and why it matters is really driven by the people. And it's about whatever those people do, whether it's laundry, whether it's a field service technician, whether it's the operator on the manufacturing line, or whether it's the runner, you know, with their Fitbit. And so it's really all encompassing, which is also why, you know, we see challenges inside companies to get value from IoT when they work in their own silos as opposed to cross-functionally, who have the insights and the context of all the people and the technologies across that spectrum.
This is Robert Schmidt, by the way. I'm here today with Heather Rangel and Mike Fallon from PTC, and we're talking about IoT and money. We're actually almost getting sort of like towards the last few questions here. And so, Mike, I want to go and shift out of the business context to sort of like ask you, you talk a lot about IoT in business. What does IoT do in your personal life? I know you play golf. Do you use like specific devices for golf? I'm just curious, how's your personal life richer and better and funner because you have all your things connected?
So for me, you know, I too have two boy athletes, and so between travel and their schedules and whatnot, it's really around how do I manage my busy life, and my wife as well. And so I think I'm really big on convenience.
You manage your wife?
No, of course not. She manages me. Trust me. And in terms of each of our busy lives, and I think, you know, to me, convenience is of high value to me as a user of technology, and you know, whether it's Lyft or Uber or OpenTable, and the ability to be connected simply and easily and conveniently and bring convenience to my life. That's really what I look for. And if I look at technologies or applications that I use, that's the driver for me.
Is your wife IoT enabled?
She has an Apple Watch.
I recently just IoT enabled my dog, and that's been fantastic because as smart as German Shepherds are, I don't know, for some reason when he gets outside, he just runs for the hills, and he's a tough one to find since most of the community is deathly afraid of him when they see him running at full speed in traffic. Well,
since you said he, I'm sure, you know, he lacks focus at times.
So your dog is now location tracked, is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, and I would like to put some on my kittens, and, you know, perhaps if even a kid here or there. Luckily, they have phones to do that for me, but should they not have their phones, a little dangling tag off their ear wouldn't be a bad thing, I think.
Absolutely.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much. I guess this coffee break is coming to a close. I want to thank Mike for a great conversation, and Heather, thank you for joining. Please join Heather and I again next Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, for another coffee with Mr.IoT. And if you missed any part, come and find us on my Mr.IoT YouTube channel. you can watch this recording and any of our previous recording. With that, thank you, everyone. Have a great Friday. And to the ones who celebrate, happy Easter.
Thank you.
Thanks.